Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the live Friday Dattitude. Jeff Duncan and I am Jim Derry here on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. We're everywhere. Jeff Duncan, and this is going to be we're going to have two more of these after this is over before Dunk goes and hides himself and works on his book, and I take a little Mardi Gras break. So we're through the Super Bowl. We're going to have a little fun with it here this morning. We're going to go a little bit shorter than usual. We're going to cut it off probably a little before 10 or right at 10. Certainly not going to go later than that. We welcome your comments in. If you're watching on Facebook and YouTube, just type into the comment stream. We have all your comments. We'll show them as we do here with Naisha says, who dat? She's still a Saints fan. Jerry's here this morning. Welcome himself in. Poppy is here. So if you want to say hello, you're more than welcome to. We will show you your comment. If you got a question for Jeff Duncan, more than happy to read it on the air. Thelma also says, who dat? Jeff Duncan, I cannot wait to eat that king cake from the place of my choosing. I have not chosen yet, but last week, in case, for those of you that were here, Mr. Duncan and I made a little – we're not on different sides all that often, but last week he had the Dallas Cowboys and I had the San Francisco 49ers. Dunk, I'm not sure why anyone would bet Dallas to go to a championship game like ever.
I was feeling good until Dak Prescott turned into a pumpkin on me and started throwing the ball the wrong jersey. That's when things went awry.
You didn't expect that to happen?
I thought it might. Yeah, I thought it might. We talked about it. I was worried about it, but my goodness. I mean, that was a winnable game for them. They've got to figure that out. I don't know how they're going to figure it out, but I owe you a king cake. I'm not a welcher on bets. I will definitely.
I know you aren't.
You come through with whatever you want. I'm willing to buy it. Matter of fact, I could use. There might be one slice missing though when it arrives at your house.
There might be one slice. Well, it won't be from Dong Fong. So I'm just saying. Not that I have anything against Dong Fong. I just think it's average. I don't get all the hype. That's a whole nother story. Anyone who's listening to this pod or watch this live knows that I think that Dong Fong is good. Don't get me wrong, but it's a cinnamon roll with butter on top. Other than that, it's just fun. Not that there's anything wrong with it.
They're not cheap. Dong Fong's not cheap. So
that doesn't mean I can find one that costs you a little bit. Take a little bit out of that book proceeds that you're gonna have soon. All right, let's get with the small talk and talk about football. And we're going to talk this morning. We're going to spend part of the morning talking about Sean Payton. We're going to talk. Obviously, we're going to give our predictions on the NFC and AFC championship games. We are going to talk a little bit about the Pelicans, and I have something that I want to show later. We didn't talk about this, Jeff Duncan, but Gary, by the way, says Kaludas is the best. I don't know Kaludas.
I've heard that. Gary, I've heard they're really good, and I've not had them either. So
Tara wants a king cake delivered to Pensacola.
Okay.
Oh, I mean, you got to make a bet with Jeff Duncan and win.
Yeah, you got to lose a bet to me, which might not be hard right now.
All right, Deborah says Sean Payton's coming back to the New Orleans Saints. I'm not really sure.
At least not this year.
Gary and Harahan is watching this morning. We thank you. And Thelma is also praying for the Sean Payton to come back to the Saints. All right, that's a good segue. Let's get into Sean Payton first. Also, by the way, I didn't finish saying what I was going to say. I have a little treat for maybe not. It's not a treat, but I had a play. For those of you that don't know, I'm also a broadcaster, a sports broadcaster on the side, and I do a lot of high school games, a little bit of college. In fact, Loyola baseball on Saturday on Varsity Sports Now. But I had a play, Dunk, an 80-foot shot on Wednesday night, and so I'm going to share it here on Dattitude as we go into the Pelicans. That's later in the show. We'll get to that in a little bit. I think everybody. It was crazy. It was crazy. I went crazy. So, but let's get into Sean Payton, and I think you and I were the first to say this because I think we both agreed. I think that it was at least 3, maybe 4 weeks ago when we talked about how we both thought that it was more likely than not. I mean, we weren't saying there was 80, 90%, but now I think it's 80, 90%. But I think we were the ones that were saying there was a better chance than not that Sean Payton was not going to coach this year because if the situation wasn't right for both Sean Payton, for the team that he wanted to go to, and they wanted him, But then it's also Mickey Loomis who holds all the cards in this thing. If all those things didn't, it's kind of like snow in New Orleans. If all the things aren't favorable, it's not going to happen. Just because, all we've heard for the past 2 weeks is, well, Sean Payton would want to go here because, the Denver people want him because they have all this money. Well, that's great, but that's only half of it. If the Saints don't get back what they want to get back, none of this happens, and I think that's kind of where we're going right now.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. I mean, he was at Arizona yesterday. It sounds like that meeting went well. He was there 6 hours. I'll still be surprised if Arizona hires him. I think, they've been in the market. What I heard for Arizona was, kind of a divided, front office ownership group on either Vance Joseph, who's a Louisiana native.
Shaw?
Yeah.
Archbishop Shaw High School.
New Orleans native, right. Or Brian Flores. So those were the two front runners going into yesterday. Now, maybe Sean Payton changed that. Maybe he unified the front there and they make a play for him. But Sean's salary demands, and I don't think he's a huge fan of Kyler Murray. So just to me, it would be a long shot for him to end up there. But I think their timing's good because if his market has dried up the way everyone's saying, then, he might want to get back into coaching bad enough to make that work. But I don't think so. I think in the end, he goes back to Fox. I guess the best way I would say to describe it, JD, and I think people are a little confused on it. He went into this process leaning toward going back to Fox. That was where he was at going into it. So it was going to take a really incredible offer or something too good to turn down to get him off that. And nothing has materialized. So, I think people thought once he started interviewing that was showing his interest in wanting to get back into coaching, which obviously he does, but not with these teams. And there are plenty of other teams in the league that have the resources and interests to hire Sean Payton. They're just not in the coaching market right now. Just because he doesn't land a coaching job in this go-round doesn't mean that no one in the league wants to hire Sean Payton. It's just not a real good match right now with the teams that have openings and what Sean Payton's looking for as well. It's a complicated situation, and Sean knew that going into it. That's why I think he was leaning to staying at Fox.
I completely agree, and we've talked about it. By the way, Thelma, thanks for saying you're a Team Dattitude fan. You're on the team. If you want to be on Team Dattitude, we'll gladly welcome you in. We do this every Friday, 9:15 a.m., at least through the Super Bowl. We're going to be doing this, and then Duncan and I are both going to be kind of going our separate ways for a little bit. We'll be back probably around draft time talking about it. Dattitude's not going anywhere. We may take a little bit of a break, but remember, you can catch Dattitude wherever you find your podcast. We've got 134 of these past episodes. This is number 135. We've got some great conversations. Duncan and I talked to Mickey Loomis in the summer. I had Jim Mora on the show. I've had Dale Brown on the show. So we've had Ricky Jackson was on it. We've had some great guests here on Dattitude. I'm thankful for that, and I'm thankful that through almost a year and a half now of doing the show, we've had some really good shows. So look, here's my thoughts on where Sean Payton is. I think, it gets talked about a lot, but not so much when you're in the moment. I think, look, if you look at where he wants to go, you talked about Kyler Murray. He's not thrilled with Kyler Murray. He wants to go somewhere where a quarterback is established, okay? Or he has at least a young quarterback that he can get something similar to what he had with Drew Brees.
Or
and
I think there's an open quarterback situation. He'll have
open
to get a quarterback,
Fair enough. Yeah, I agree totally. So this is what I think, and it leads into this comment. Ben writes, Cowboys in 2024. I think that the leading candidates for Sean Payton services are either Dallas in 2024, which means, after the 2023 season is over. If Dallas has another season like this one, or maybe a little bit worse, and their schedule is going to be tougher. They had one of the easiest schedules in the NFL this year. If Dallas doesn't take a step forward, and I know Jeff Duncan's a huge Mike McCarthy fan, so he's probably not going to agree with me, but Jerry Jones has been drooling over Sean Payton for years and years. If he gets a chance to bring in Sean Payton, I think he's going to. Or I think actually a more likely scenario is the Chargers are not going to stay with their clown. I'm shocked that they stuck with that guy. I think Staley is an awful coach, okay? I think that's actually a more likely situation. Sean Payton with Justin Herbert, I think, could be a great match. And I think that the Chargers are actually set up to be really good over the next 5 to 7 years. If the Chargers don't take a huge step forward, I easily could see Sean Payton going to the Chargers. And then there's the possibility, Dunk, although slight as it may be, there is a possibility that he comes back to New Orleans and coaches the Saints. Again, slight. Don't get your hopes up.
I don't think that's a long shot at all, in my opinion.
Okay.
But I mean, look, things would have to go sideways here with Dennis Allen. Nobody wants to see that. So, but if it did bottom out.
I didn't say I'm rooting against the.
I don't understand where this is coming. Sean Payton is willing and open to come back to New Orleans. Just, it's not going to happen right now. They got a coach, but the thought that he wouldn't come back, get that out of your head. Yes, he would. I know he would. So I don't know how many.
But you've already said, Dunk. You've already said in past shows that had the door been open this year, that this would have been his first choice. That that if Mickey would have been willing to lose Dennis Allen after a year, which isn't Mickey Loomis's style, that he probably would have come back here.
Yes, no doubt in my mind. 100%. There's only so many places that Sean Payton's going to be the right fit. And I think that's what we found out in this coaching cycle is that, there's some general managers out there that are going to be intimidated by Sean Payton. He's a presence, man. I mean, this is a guy that wants a lot of control. It's the same reason why a lot of organizations weren't a right fit for Bill Parcells. Doesn't mean they're wrong. It doesn't mean Bill Parcells is wrong or Sean Payton's wrong. It's just not the right fit in how they want to structure their organization. But Sean knows the Saints. They know him, and that fit would certainly be viable. But they have a head coach right now. The timing was not good this year. And Dennis Allen's going to get another year to right the ship. Now, he's going to have to make progress. I mean, 7-10 is not going to cut it. So we'll see how it plays out. The one thing I'm a little I was talking to some friends yesterday about this. The one thing I have a little pause on with the organization since Sean Payton left, and that was how they handled the quarterback in the offseason. The fact that they went all in to try and get Deshaun Watson, then didn't seem to have a great backup plan. They settle on Jameis Winston as a backup, but they pay him $14 million. They bail on him after 2 or 3 games. It was just a bizarre situation all the way around. And if I'm a Saints fan, a diehard Saints fan, I would be concerned with what the vision was there. I think that's one thing you can say for sure. Sean Payton would have had a better plan for how they were going to handle quarterback.
Do you think that Mickey steps in and takes more? And look, Mickey's kind of a GM where he trusts his coach. I mean, and I don't know how much more he may have stepped in. And if we can get him on in the offseason again, it's a question I would ask. But Mickey's a guy that trusts his coach, trusts his coaches, and trusts their opinions. So do you think that maybe this is a situation this offseason where maybe he steps in a little bit more and says, you know what, I'm going to take a larger role in the selection of the next quarterback?
Yeah, that's a good point, JD. And I think that very much could be the case this offseason. I think the Saints like Andy Dalton a lot. I know they do. I'm not saying he's going to be the guy, but I would not be shocked if he's back here in some role, backup or something.
Can't do it.
But they like him a lot, and I think he likes being in New Orleans a lot. So now I'm not sure he's going to be the starter, but they paid him only $3 million last year. That's rock bottom by starting NFL quarterback standards. They're not going to get him back for that. So that's where I start to wonder with their cap limitations, if, say, Derek Carr were a possibility, can you afford to pay Andy Dalton $5 or $6 million as a backup? That's what they were paying Teddy Bridgewater, and then still pay Carr. I don't know if they've got the money to do that. So they're a little bit of a bind here financially.
I can't do another season of Andy Dalton. I really can't. I mean, it's certainly better than Trevor Siemian, no question about that. There's a lot of quarterbacks that I think Andy Dalton's better than, but I don't have enough material. I mean, there's only so many ways I could say the things that I said. I like Andy Dalton. I think he's a great guy. I'm sure he's a wonderful family man, but he's going to be 36 years old next year. I can't do it. So that leads me to Derek Carr, and I'm glad you brought it up on your own because I have seen the odds shrink a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And I'm hearing more grumblings about Derek Carr. And I know a lot of people are like, no. I think Derek Carr would be a great fit in New Orleans. I think he would be a huge upgrade over anything the Saints have had since Drew Brees have left. Now, it hasn't been that long. But I think that Derek Carr could come in here and be a quarterback that is a guy that's here for 5 to 7 years because he's still young enough to start over again with another franchise and be a really good quarterback.
Yeah, I wonder a little bit about them giving up on him so quickly, Josh McDaniels. But people do that and make mistakes. So
it wasn't his style of a quarterback.
I agree with you, though, too. I mean, he would definitely be an upgrade. There's absolutely no doubt. I'm interested to see if there is obviously a connection there because of Dennis Allen's history with him. But the Saints have to do something to upgrade that position. We've talked about it. This team's good enough to win, be close to a 500 team without great quarterback play. But if they can just get decent quarterback play in this division where Tom Brady's probably going to be leaving Tampa Bay, Atlanta still hasn't settled their quarterback situation. Neither is Carolina. The division's still kind of wide open if they can fix that one position, I think.
I agree wholeheartedly. And I think that the Saints still are in a position to be able to compete. And here's why I think that Derek Carr is going to be one of your best fits. I think you got to go find a way to get either Derek Carr or Jimmy Garoppolo, in my opinion. I think you have to. And the reason being now that the Sean Payton thing is looking more and more like it's not going to happen, the Saints can't wait and find a guy that's going to come in and quarterback right away in the second round or later. They're not going to be in the mix for any, they're not going to pick until the second round. You can't wait that long to try to draft a quarterback that can come in. I'm not saying you can't find a quarterback that can start for you at some point in the near future, but I'm talking about if you have any hopes to be competitive in 2023, they're going to have to find a way, and as cap-strapped as they are, they'll find ways to do it. That's one thing the Saints are better at than anyone else. You can't keep kicking the can down the road. We've talked about that. So, but bringing in a Derek Carr or a Garoppolo, they're going to have to – I think they have to find a way if they want to be competitive because they're just not going to find a quarterback in the draft. Nobody gets lucky like the Niners and got Brock Purdy, who was the last player picked in the draft who they didn't expect to play. So I think that's where you are right now, Duncan. Even if you get a Hendon Hooker or a Stetson Bennett, and I'm not sure that's a player that's going to be able to come in and start right away, especially not Hendon Hooker, who's probably going to be out for most of next year with his ACL injury.
Yeah, we don't even know, it's just now starting kind of the draft process. Next week is the Senior Bowl. Certainly Jeff Ireland and his staff are familiar with the college prospects, but this coaching staff and front office otherwise is just now dipping their toes in the water on the draft. So we've got a long way to go before we even know if they like anybody in the draft or if there's someone they really value. That'll play out over the next few months. But I think even if they do go that direction, JD, I think they have to have a bridge guy like we're talking about, just to fall back on. I think the key is going to be what they do here in the next few weeks leading up to the start of free agency, the start of the league year. There's going to be a lot of roster purging going on. This team has to clear cap room. There's going to be a lot, the way these contracts are structured, there's a lot of roster bonuses tied. If you're on the roster at the start of the league year, the team owes you X amount of dollars.
Right.
We've seen the one that's already been reported about Mike Thomas, $30-something million that they commit to him if he's on the roster February 17th. Well, they're not going to pay that. So they're either going to have to trade him, release him, or restructure his deal before that date. So there's a lot of that stuff going to be going on, including players that will be cap casualties who I predict will be like Jameis Winston, Andres Pete, names of that caliber that probably won't be back here next year as this team transitions into this offseason.
This is going to be one of the craziest off seasons, not just for the Saints, but I think all over the league. You're going to see a lot of big names cut. You're going to be like, what? People who don't understand how the cap works and exactly what you talked about. If you're going to not going to pay someone, you have to cut them by X date in March. I don't remember exactly what the date is, but it's sometime in March. And you know, that's going to happen. There's going to be a lot of shockers this year. Jim Day and Jeff Duncan here as we are every Friday morning. We're going to be cutting it a little bit shorter than normal. We're not going to go to 10:15 like we normally do. We're going to be cutting it off somewhere around 10. There's some things that we want to get to. So if you want to comment or ask a question, do it now. You got about 15 minutes probably before we stop taking questions. Jerry says he doesn't want to see Carr in New Orleans. What are your options, Jerry? I mean, I know Jerry doesn't want Andy Dalton back at quarterback, and you've been a regular long enough to know that. I mean, you just have limited options. I mean, it's not like, okay, I want Joe Burrow to be the Saints quarterback. Oh, so does everybody else. I mean, you know, that's great in theory. You can't. First of all, Tom Brady would never come here, I don't think, at this point. But I mean, do you want a guy like Tom Brady who's going to be 46 years old next year? I mean, what are your options? There aren't a ton of options. You can go the same route the Saints went this year and bring in an Andy Dalton type of quarterback for $3-4 million, but you might as well keep Andy Dalton if you're going to do that. I mean, because he was productive enough to know what you're going to get. I mean, Dunk, we've said it 1,000 times. I mean, you not as much as me, but you can take Andy Dalton's stat line from 14 out of 17 games in a season, and it's the same stat line that he's had every game in his career. He's not going to kill you, but he's not going to do anything spectacular either. So if you go out and get some shot, you know, if you bargain hunt, you go to the dollar store for a quarterback, you're going to get the same thing, just in a different name.
I compare Dalton to, say, Gardner Minshew, right? I heard a lot of people going, "Oh, we want Gardner Minshew. We want Gardner." You know, you hear a lot of people.
I'd rather have Andy Dalton.
And then when you saw Minshew against the Saints, right, a really good defense, a great pass defense,
right?
You saw his limitations, right?
Correct.
Couldn't make a play to save his life. So that's what you get when you get a quarterback of that kind of ilk. That's more of a backup. They can come in, they can manage the offense, but when they get against somebody good, you got to be able to make plays there. And you know, that's what really to me where Andy Dalton is exposed is when they play good teams and also when they need it. He had so many games this year. How many times do we hear Dennis Allen say, "We got to learn how to finish games"? You know, that cliche. Well,
Every week.
The quarterback is responsible for that. You got to get a couple first downs when the team knows it. You got to put the Bengals away when you got a chance. You got to put Tom Brady away when you got the chance. That also falls on the offense to control the ball when they get it, not just the defense to stop Brady. You get the ball back outside, and Brady, Dalton could not do it. He could not come through.
If I had to hear one more time, either A, we've got to get better, or B, bitching about the refs in his own little Dennis Allen way, I was going to go insane. I at least that was one thing about going on a winning streak towards the end of the season. I didn't have to hear that anymore. I couldn't take that. It was we've got to get better. Well, no shit, you got to get better. I mean, pardon my French, but no, I mean, come on, you got to get better. Well, no, let's keep going. We're 4-8. Okay, no kidding, you got to get better. It boggles the mind these coach speak things and come up with something new. Give me some attitude.
Well, he got better at that. I think DA did figure
maybe
that
a little.
But he's trying to own it. I respect that. He's got to own it. He's not making. The thing that worried me a little bit was one of the things. I hate to keep going back to Sean Payton. I sound like the PR man for Sean, but the one thing I respected the most, and I've told you this before on this program, he never, very rarely made excuses. He wouldn't allow his team to lean on that crutch of injuries or we had to get evacuated by a hurricane. To me, that was one of his strengths was in adversity, he rallied the troops. So you just didn't look. Now, privately, he may complain about a call or an official, but publicly, he wasn't going to allow his team to lean on that crutch. And that's something I saw seeping into the Saints this year that I didn't like.
Write a blog about it, Kat. That's a whole different story. And a little inside joke. All right, let's move on a little bit because, again, we've only got about another 15 to 18 minutes. Want to get your comments in. And if you want to make predictions for the games this week, we'll welcome those as well. But we got to move on because I do want to talk about basketball for 3 or 4 minutes before we go off the show. NFC, AFC championship games. I think, the lines makers obviously think that this is going to be one of the closest championship weekends. I don't know how we get any closer than we got last year. I don't know if you know this, Dunk. I've said it a couple of times now. But last year was only the second time in NFL championship game history, dating back to 1970, to where they had both games were within a field goal or less. It's going to be hard to repeat history. So even though the lines makers think both of these games are going to be within a field goal, I think one of them is going to be a little bit more of a blowout than the other. And I'm not, blowout's not the right word. I think one of them is going to have a little larger disparity, I guess. Maybe a touchdown, maybe 10-point difference.
Right.
I think we agree on which game that's going to be. I'm going to let you say it first.
Well, I think the best bet of the weekend is the Kansas City Chiefs. I just think mentally, and look, I'm guilty of this as someone, I'm not a big sports bettor at all, but I do write a betting column, and I've been actually pretty successful this year with my picks. I was not last week, as you pointed out, to start the program. But one thing I lean on a lot in covering the league for a long time is kind of the intangibles and motivation and underdog. Maybe that's the years of covering Payton because he fed into that mind game stuff. And I just feel like Kansas City comes into this game with the intangibles all on their side. People counting them out, pointing out they lost 3 in a row to Burrow and the Bengals in the last year, and Mahomes is hurt, and they're at home, which is one of the most difficult places to play in the league. I just feel like that crowd's going to be into it. And I feel like maybe that the offensive line issues that the Bengals had, which were not a factor, I have to say, against Buffalo. I mean, they played well up front. It was amazing to me how well those backup linemen played. But sometimes that comes back the next week and gets exposed. So we'll see. But I love the Chiefs in this game. I think they can win this game by double digits. You can do that, right? Do an alternate line.
You can.
Spread.
Yeah, like get a better price on that.
I think putting like $50 on the Chiefs minus 10, you might get good odds. It might be a good bet.
I'm not going to switch off my screen here, but if I had to guess what that would be, probably in the plus 300 range. So you could bet $50 to win 150 if you wanted to do that. Look, this isn't my best bet, and I'm going to talk about all my best bets with Uncle Big Nick after this on the regular pod. I had my monologue, and then Uncle Big Nick and I get together and we give our best bets of the week. But I do think if one game is going to be a blowout, if this makes any sense, I think the Chiefs had the best chance to do exactly what Jeff Duncan said. Patrick Mahomes has been hearing all week how he's hurt and how this, Joe Burrow is on a roll. Yeah, he's on a roll. That's great. But I agree with Dunk. The number one thing is what you said about the offensive line. It didn't come into play last week. But who likes to blitz more than Steve Spagnuolo? I think that it is going to be a factor this week. I think that Joe Burrow is going to get sacked 5, 6, 7 times. And I want Cincinnati to win. I've got a big future on them. I got a future on Cincinnati and San Francisco that I bought back in October. So by all means, I got it at plus 900. Please win, Bengals, win. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think Patrick Mahomes has got something to prove. And I think Mr. Kelsey is going to get involved big. And I'd love to hear what you think about this. But the way that Isaiah Pacheco, this rookie, is running the football right now, I think he's going to be a star in this league.
Yeah, I think he's going to be he's a stud, man.
He
I
is.
thought about him last week. I thought, boy, he'd look good in a Saints uniform. You'd feel a lot better, wouldn't you, about Alvin Kamara's off-field issues? If you had him to be your lead back, he'd fit in perfectly with the Saints. Great scouting on their part to identify. I never heard of the guy. Was he Rutgers, I think?
Rutgers, yep.
Yeah, just a no-name guy, great scouting. And you're right. I mean, he replaced Clyde Edwards-Helaire midway through the season. They've been a different offense. And I agree with you. I don't know if there's individual prop bets, but that's a good one, I think. Total yards.
That's actually one of my prop bets. And there's a bet right now at Caesars. I think it's over 69.5 rushing yards and to score a touchdown as 5-1. And I think that's a really good bet. So I like that one a lot. Also, like if you just don't want to bet a parlay and you don't want to bet a like that, I think you bet his over under rushing yards. I think it's 47.5 or something like that. And I like that as well because I think you're going to see a healthy dose of Isaiah Pacheco in this game. Remember, I don't know if you remember this, but about 10 years ago, you gave me a little tip going into the fantasy football season. You're like, you got to draft this David Johnson guy. And I didn't know who David Johnson was from going into college. Well, someone among your ilk told me that I needed to draft Isaiah Pacheco this year. And boy, were they right. I mean, so, I know everybody loves Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And so do I. I mean, he helped LSU win a national championship, but I think Isaiah Pacheco's got that starting role, and Kansas City is going to, I think, begin to transition and run the ball a little bit more. We'll see in future seasons, and it's going to be him.
Yeah, here's the other thing I would say. Look, I love Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow, to me, is the closest thing we've seen since
Correct.
I mean, he's a winner. He lifts up everybody on that team. In the clutch, he's so cool and poised. Reminds me so much of Breeze, and he wears that number because of Breeze, we all know. But I just feel like the law of averages at some point, he's got to have a little bit of a down game. I mean, he's thrown 8 touchdowns and no interceptions in 3 games against KC. KC's pass defense has improved this year. I think your point about Spagnuolo and the pass rush will get after him a little more. And I just feel like at some point it levels out. You regress to the mean. He can't keep throwing up these absurd numbers. And I think what you said earlier before we came on air was a really key point. Kansas City hasn't gone into this series in this situation in the past. They've always been kind of heavily favored. They're overdogs, if you will. And I'm not saying they're underdogs, but a lot of people are doubting them in this game. And the American public is talking about how Joe Burrow's had the edge in this series. And I just think Patrick Mahomes, the way he reacted last week to that injury, you could see he wanted this. He did not want to miss any of these games. This guy
said, no way.
Yeah,
you could read his lips on the sideline.
Yeah, he's on a mission, man. I guarantee you he's spending extra time in film study this week. That guy, and we don't see that very often. They've been the favorites in the AFC for 3 or 4 years now. This is a perfect time for a team like them kind of getting counted out a little bit to rise up and put the game together. And in some ways, look, if they win this game, it might be the worst thing because then they've had their huge emotional game. And I know they're going to the Super Bowl, but it might be hard to get back up again, even though I know it's the Super Bowl. That seems crazy, but you put everything into a championship game like that, it might be time to go against them in the Super Bowl.
We got we don't get a lot of Twitter comments because you have to actually tag me at Jim Derry Jr. if you want to tag me on Twitter to get on the show, which is great. You can do that. Tag me at Jim Derry Jr. That's where I reside. But we got a comment from his name on Twitter is Get DA Pete Carmichael and Andy out of my face. That's his Twitter name. Okay, he says, as long as he's not the starter, meaning Andy Dalton, he says, I'm good. And then Joe Horn's cell phone has posted some interesting notes from Dattitude. He says we said we wouldn't be surprised to see Andy Dalton back in some capacity. No, Jeff Duncan said that. I would be surprised if Andy Dalton's back in any shit. I have lost a little. I'm going to be nice. I would be surprised if Andy Dalton is back in any capacity. We'll see how that goes.
I would be stunned if Jameis Winston's back. Stunned.
Oh, so would I, which is ridiculous. That's a whole nother story. If you want to hear me rant on about Jameis Winston / Andy Dalton, go find Dattitude on any podcast site that you use, Apple, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, and go back and find like episode, I don't know, 108. I'm just guessing 109, 110, 111, and go on from there. I have plenty to say on the whole Jameis Winston, Andy Dalton thing. Duncan doesn't agree with me, but I'm telling you, somehow, we're not going to get into this. He pissed somebody off. It is the only logical explanation that Jameis Winston didn't get another chance to play again. Again, a whole nother story. We'll talk about that in the offseason because now I'm starting to get riled up. Jeff Duncan. We got to talk about the NFC Championship game. San Francisco and Philadelphia. This is my best bet. Okay. I'm giving a spoiler alert to anyone who's listening on the regular pod, the audio only version of this. I'm giving a spoiler alert. I think I said in August, I said in September, I said in October, I said in November, I said in December, and I'm going to say it again in January. The San Francisco 49ers are the best team in the NFL. And I know that people have this recency bias, and they watched last week, and the 49ers struggled with Dallas. People don't realize how good Dallas's defense really is. Right. And people talk about how great Philly's defense is. Their run defense actually kind of stinks. And San Francisco is like a chameleon. They can do whatever they want. They're going to get a healthy dose of Christian McCaffrey, who's not nearly as hurt as everybody thinks he is, Elijah Mitchell, who's not nearly as hurt as everybody thinks he is, and Deebo Samuel. And as long as Brock Purdy doesn't make mistakes, I think San Francisco's going to win this football game.
I'm with you. I love the Niners in this game. I think a big key for the Niners, I wrote about this in my column, is they've got to be solid against the run with Philly. I mean, I think they'll try to shut down that Philly running game and make them one-dimensional. And that's the one thing that Philly has done this year. I have to give them credit, Howie Roseman, in the front office.
Oh, he's a phenomenal GM.
They did a great job. They brought in A.J. Brown. They got him in a trade. Obviously, they got Devontae Smith the year before. They've got weapons. And if you go back to last year, at the start of last season, San Francisco went into Philly and beat Philly. Low-scoring game. Jalen Hurts really couldn't do much once they really stuck to the ground game. He ran a lot in that game. They couldn't pass the ball, but they didn't have Smith or Brown in that game. They've got better weapons on the perimeter now, and they've obviously got a great offensive line. But San Francisco, I think, is number 2 in the league in run defense. They got the best defense overall in the league, and they lead the league in interceptions. They've had 4 in the playoffs. So if they get Jalen Hurts into these one-dimensional passing situations, that's not going to be good for Philly. I think eventually he makes a mistake, and I think that's where San Francisco can win this game. I don't have a feel for the total at all. I don't know if it's going to be.
I like the over, actually.
Yeah,
but everybody likes the under. I think it's going to score.
I would lean toward the over if I were leaning. Yeah.
Yeah, most of the sharps and especially everyday Joe Q Public and Aunt Mabel, they all like the under in this game. And I think there's going to be scoring because I think Jalen Hurts may have a little success earlier. But I think as the game wears on, and one thing that San Francisco maybe is better at than anyone else is, they are so physically dominant that through the course of 4 quarters, it's the reason why they're so good in the second half of ball games. They just wear you out. And I think as good as Philly's offensive line is, they haven't seen the kind of pressure that they're going to get. I don't necessarily think that Jalen Hurts is going to be forced to be one-dimensional, but I think he's going to get hit quite a bit. And I think after you get hit that many times, you go sit in the locker room at halftime after you got punched in the ribs like 4 or 5 times, it starts to wear on you a little bit. And I agree with you. He's going to make a second-half mistake that he hasn't made in the past.
Yeah, and those linebackers, San Francisco, I mean, they're as good as anybody.
Really good.
Dre Greenlaw, Fred Warner. They can go sideline to sideline, and they're going to be a key in this game, not only in the running game and controlling Hurts, but also I think in the passing game. We saw Warner last week. I mean, 25 yards downfield, breaking up a key pass. I mean, that guy's a Pro Bowler for a reason. So I just feel like they're also in. Look, Sirianni's done a great job this year. Kudos to him. But Kyle Shanahan might be the best coach in the league right now.
I agree wholeheartedly.
You talked about how they wear teams down the second half. That's by design, and they also adjust as the game goes on. They did a great job adjusting to Dallas last week, and all they needed in that game was like that one touchdown drive. It was such a tight game. It's what it took. And Brock Purdy came through, man. I mean, the guy is unbelievable. I don't think the stage is going to be too big for him. And I just think they're going to be in a game like this. If they get the lead, I think the pressure will invert onto Philly. I've been to games there. Philly fans are crazy passionate, but they turn, they get anxiety ridden, and it puts pressure on the home team. It's a weird dynamic, but it happens there. And if San Francisco gets up and gets control, I can see Hurts making a mistake.
All right, I got to get some props. Choppa, he says, can San Francisco and KC's in the Super Bowl? We welcome you in. Thanks for joining us on Dattitude. I think that's exactly what's going to happen. I think, I think Philly may take a lead, and then that's the perfect time. If you want to wait and you're not as sure as I am, because if Philly takes a lead, this line could go to like 6.5 or 7.
Yep.
And you get a great money line on San Francisco. If Philly goes down the field and scores, even if it's a field goal early on, if you get San Francisco live at a better money line than right now, they're plus 122, great value on that. All right, we got to move on because we have got Jeff Duncan's got some things to do this morning. I do as well. So we're going to cut it off right around 10, maybe a little after 10. But I want to show you Jeff Duncan and show our Dattitude watchers because our listeners – I'm going to leave this on the regular audio pod because I had a little fun Wednesday night calling the Hammond St. Paul's game. I do all St. Paul's home games for Varsity Sports now. I'm also doing Loyola baseball on Saturday, which is tomorrow. I lose track of days. But there was a shot, an 80-foot shot made in the St. Paul's Hammond game by a kid named Lamar Tobias. I thought it should have been on SportsCenter's top 10, but the least they can do for this kid is put him on Dattitude. I'm going to do that here, and if you're listening only, you can imagine in your head what it's like. Here it is.
Field, 5 seconds. Got to get it to somebody. Throws it away instead. And at the buzzer, oh my goodness! Holy smokes, Lamar Tobias from 70 feet! Wow. Wow. It counts. We knew it counts. Let's look at it again.
There's the throwaway there.
Holy smokes.
Boom.
What a shot. Nothing but net.
Wow. Just wow.
Well, I don't think there's any better way to go.
You don't get those very often, Jeff Duncan.
So Hail Marys aren't just for football. What
No.
a shot.
It ended up we came back nothing but net. And the cool thing about it is, well, first of all, we had to tell him. I went and talked to him after the game, and it was actually 80 feet, not 70 feet. So I shorted him a little bit. But when we came back from break, we figured out it was 80 feet. But went and talked to him after the game, and I asked him, when did he know that it was going in? And he said, you got to love the confidence of kids. The second it left my hand.
Yeah, right.
He started pulling up his phone and showing me a couple of his other shots. Dunk, you and I have both been in this business a long time. I've been in for 32 years now, and I've covered a little bit of everything. I mean, I know you're a sports columnist. One of the great things about being a columnist is you get to go around and cover whatever you want. You've done some high school things in the past, but being a beat writer, I've been lucky enough throughout my career to do it all. There's nothing like covering high school. I mean, there's not. The kids have so much heart. I love being around those kids, and I love my job. Don't get me wrong. So, Zach, if you're listening, I'm not planning on going anywhere or doing anything else. I love my job now, but I do miss being around kids as much as I was for 10 years in a row covering high school sports in New Orleans. There's nothing like it.
Yeah, look, when I first started in the journalism profession, working my way through college at the University of Louisville, I worked at the Courier-Journal in Louisville, and I remember J.C. Clemens, who actually worked down here. He was in Louisiana for a while. J.C. was our Cincinnati Reds beat writer, and when the baseball season got done, he came back to Louisville, moved back to Louisville from Cincinnati, and covered girls' high school basketball. And you can imagine this, Jim, as a young, college student. My eyes were big on being Reds beat writer. I thought that was the coolest thing. And JC used to always tell me, I hate covering the Reds. I love covering girls' high school basketball. It didn't register with me at the time, but he talked about exactly what you're talking about. The athletes love talking to you. You get great access. It's kind of pure sports. You're not dealing with agents and all the other stuff that comes with professional sports. And I've never forgotten that, and I agree with you 100%. The lower down you go on the profile, if you will, the better it is for me, at least, and probably for you to cover.
You don't get the "what do you want" kind of attitude, or "I'm not talking to you today" kind of attitude. They love talking to you. They love following what you do on Twitter. They still follow me. I mean, Jamar Chase still follows me on Twitter. Not that he gives a rat's patoot about what I have to say about the Saints or anything or what I'm betting on this week, but he still follows me because I do still talk about high school sports on my feed from time to time and show clips from like what I showed here. And from when he went to Rummel. I've known Jamar Chase since he was 14 years old. And Justin Jefferson as well. I mean, they were high school kids like anybody else, and they were fun. And those dudes are still the same cats. They'll still talk to you. So I'm not talking about that, but there's something about being able to cover Leonard Fournette. And the first time I ever saw him, I'm like, whoa. Yeah. I mean, Leonard Fournette is clearly, he's by far. I mean, you can talk about whatever you want now, but Leonard Fournette was the best high school athlete I ever covered in my life, and I miss it. And you knew that dude was going to be in the NFL. I didn't know Justin Jefferson was going to be in the NFL when I covered him at Destrehan, and I certainly didn't know he was going to be the best receiver in football. And Jamar Chase is right up there as well. So one thing you get to watch. So it's cool stuff. I do miss it. All right, 3 more minutes, Dunk. Let's talk about the New Orleans Pelicans. And, oh, my goodness, it's been a rough road for them. 6 losses in a row. This schedule stretch is not helping them at all. But at the same time, and BI's coming back now. We don't know when Zion's coming back. They have got to find a way to break out of this funk. I'm not saying they need to go on a 6-game winning streak or an 8-game winning streak, but they got to find a way to win 4 out of 8, 5 out of 8. Tread water until they can get their guys healthy and get themselves in a position where the schedule gets a little bit easier.
Yeah, I mean, they're still going to make the playoffs. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about that. But this is all hurting their seeding at the end of the year, and that will come into play later. They got to get this game against Washington. They cannot lose this one. I mean, I felt kind of the same way against Minnesota the other night, and they let that one slip away. But that was BI's first game back. I think getting him back in the groove is critical because offensively they're not gelling. I mean, teams have figured out the limitations of the lineup. They just focus on C.J. McCollum. Now you've got Brandon Ingram, gives them another scoring option to go with McCollum. And, but it's still tough. I mean, next week, I think they have at Milwaukee and at Denver. I mean, those.
Yeah, I mean, you see the schedule there. It's like they got another back-to-back Saturday and Sunday. They host the Wizards, and then they have to go to Milwaukee on the next night. I think it's a night game. I didn't put the time on there. So you host the Wizards and then go. I hate when the NBA does that, by the way. It's one thing if you play back-to-back at home or on the road and it's close proximity, but to play at home against the Wizards and then go to Milwaukee, and then you only got one day off before you have to go to Denver. So, I mean, this isn't just like run-of-the-mill teams. You're talking about maybe the best team in the East and probably the best team in the West right now in just that short period of time.
Yeah, look, I don't think they need to rush back Zion Williamson because those hamstring injuries, you don't want to have a setback there. But it's good to get Brandon Ingram back on the court. He was rusty in his first game back. That's to be expected. But the more he plays, I think the better he's going to get, the more comfortable he's going to get. And then they can start building towards something. Because let's face it, I mean, these are the teams they're going to have to beat when they get in the playoffs in April and May. They're going to have to be able to handle Denver. So, going to Denver this week will be a good education for them. Right now, Denver's a tough matchup for them, though, I think.
Thank you, Jerry. He says Pelicans at Bucks Sunday at 2:30. Why would they put that on during one of the championship games? I mean, really? Yeah, they played last week during the playoffs, and I'm like trying to switch back and forth, watch the end of the Pelicans game and watch the Bengals at the same time. Luckily, the Bengals were winning handily, so it was easy to switch. But, I mean, why would they do that? But anyway, so you got to play Saturday night at home, and then you got to go play an afternoon game in Milwaukee. Who's scheduling this?
Yeah, that's going to be tough. That's going to be tough. And no one's going to watch that game. I mean, I think these 2 championship games are going to have really high ratings because of the star.
I agree. I got the new TV coming in, so I'm excited. I'll be watching I'm pretty fired up. The other one died. I didn't just go out willy-nilly. When you're a sports writer, you can't just go out and say, okay, it's not like, if you work as a lawyer or a doctor and you're like, oh, we need a big screen. No, it doesn't work that way. So anyway, but I'm excited because this is once every 7
you just got to win your bets this weekend and pay for that TV, man.
I've done pretty good this year. I've had a pretty good year. So it'll be an even nicer year if it's San Francisco. Put it this way: if it's San Francisco and Cincinnati, the TV is paid for. So that's what I'm hoping for. I don't think it's going to be that way. So don't get me wrong. I'm not being Derry Downer. I don't want Cincinnati to lose. I think Cincinnati's going to lose. Big difference. So I'm rooting for the Niners and Bengals. Final thoughts, Jeff Duncan, as we go off into the nether space and watch football this weekend, and you probably work until who knows when.
Yeah, look, next week's Senior Bowl, there'll be a lot of news coming out. There's been a little bit of a, kind of a dearth of Saints news because they've been hunkered down out there, the staff meeting over personnel, the roster, making those decisions that we talked about earlier. And so there'll be some more news come out next week. I expect them to start making some coaching hires. They still need to hire a tight ends coach, kind of running game coordinator. I know they interviewed Declan Doyle this past week, who's a inside guy who's been on the staff for a while there, very well respected. I think they had an outside candidate come in as well. I don't know who that is, but I heard they interviewed someone from outside as well. And then they could have to hire a defense coordinator position if both Chris Richard and Ryan Nielsen both get jobs. I mean, both of them have interviewed with multiple teams. So that would obviously be a big loss. Both those guys are excellent coaches, and I think are obviously in demand for a reason because they have great reputations around the league. And I've heard this as well. If Sean Payton were to get a job, if he were to get, say, Arizona job or Denver, I would not be surprised if he brought some coaches with him, including potentially Ryan Nielsen.
Yeah, that's probably going to happen if he were to get another job. But I think Duncan and I both think it's about 80% that he doesn't at this point.
Right.
Wouldn't shock me if he decides to take one of these jobs and the Saints are willing to let him go there. But I think at this point it's looking more and more. I was saying 60% the last couple of weeks that he didn't get a job. I think it's 80 to 85% now that he doesn't get a job. And as a matter of fact, I showed my clip of I told you that I do play-by-play for St. Paul's basketball. Well, one of the kids' names on St. Paul's basketball is Danny Rochar. So his dad is Dan Rochar, who you were talking about the replacement there at tight ends coach. It's probably not the most
very
fun.
good coach. And if Sean gets a job, Dan will be one of the first people he calls.
There's no question. There's no question about that. All right, so that means we got more Saints stuff to talk about next week. It won't be, of course, we will probably lead into the Super Bowl matchup a little bit, but next week will probably be more of a Saints-centric show. Obviously, we'll talk about the Pelicans as well. We'll talk about Sean Payton, a lot of the things you saw here. So next Friday at 9:15 a.m. and then the Friday after that, and then that's going to be our last live show with Jeff Duncan for a little while. I'm going to take a little Mardi Gras break. Jeff Duncan's going to go work on his book. We'll probably do some shows here and there about as we lead into the draft and free agency and all that stuff. But we got 2 more after this. We thank you for being a part of it. Jeff Duncan, have a great weekend and start thinking about where you're about the king cake situation.
Just let me know. I'll do the walk of shame to go get your king cake. But no, everybody have a great weekend. We'll talk about next week Jim's new TV after he gets paid for the Bengals 49ers or Chiefs 49ers.
Go Niners. That's all I got to say. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Have a wonderful weekend. Be safe. Enjoy the football and spend it with the ones you love. We will talk to you next Friday, Monday on Dattitude on the podcast itself. Talk to you later. Peace and love, my friends.